So once again, a very good morning to each one of you here. Um, and today uh, I will be deliberating to you on the topic of Karl Marx theory of alienation. So basically, what is this theory of alienation? As I just mentioned to you before, just a moment back, you see, the theory of alienation actually it highlights, particularly the discontent and the mortification of labor under capitalism, or rather, you can say, it highlights the deeper dissatisfaction that the laborers are feeling while performing their duty because of the fact that they have been alienated, or they have a feeling of not being the proprietor of that particular product. So let me give you an example. You know, when we discuss about surplus value, I have told you that what the capitalist does is he extract the labor capacity of the labor in order to make profit. Now, for let's say I have to make one table. So in the process of making that table, suppose I am a skilled uh, carpenter, so I make that table. So much of my thoughts, my ideas, so much of my capacity to work, I'm using my muscle, I'm using my skill, using the tools, everything else in order to make that table, which maybe somebody has ordered and given to me to do that work. So therefore, what happens is, one feels very happy when he sees that the table is done, and it is done in a very nice way, in a very nice and beautiful way. Unfortunately, I'm not able to show you my table here, but the table that I'm using here in my office here in Shillong is a very beautiful table, which is made by my uncle, who is a carpenter. He takes his own time to make it, and the final product, I can say, even though I have not made that table, I feel very attached to this table of my own here, and I'm very sure that my uncle would certainly have felt even more attached to this table, because he can see that this table is his own imagination, own innovation, own creativity, and so on and so forth. However, Karl Marx says that in the capitalist system, you see, somebody employed, or somebody in the capitalist system, because people are forced to labor, to work, like we discussed yesterday and the day before, just because the laborer has to sell his commodity, and that is his product or his labor. What happens is, and the capitalist is concerned about competition, and he's concerned about making profit, extracting the surplus value from the labor. So therefore, what happened is, instead of one carpenter making a table, he may employ 5-6 laborers to make the table, so that one will be making only one leg throughout the day. So instead of making one leg or one table, he will be producing hundreds of one piece of the leg of the table every day. And somebody may be working on the sun mica that is used on top of the table, or somebody is to do the one part of the fittings. So basically, in the capital system, Karl Marx is trying to tell us that number one, the worker, instead of having a sense that this is my own creation, he cannot claim that. He will not feel so, because as I said, he is not one person who produced the finished table, but there are hundreds of other people. And in the process, therefore, Karl Marx is saying, instead of the workers, cooperating with each other, helping each other, because of the competitions, they may be alienated from themselves as well. Number one, he is alienated from his own creativity, innovation. Number two, he is alienated, from his own product. If he has made the table, he will not. He first of all, he cannot say that this is the table that I have made. The second thing is, maybe he will not have the power to buy the same table that he has made in a factory system, because then that table may be very expensive. It is beyond his wage or capacity to buy that particular table. So therefore, as I said, before I come into the systematic explanation of this particular theory of Karl Marx, I want to insist again that this theory of alienation highlights that discontentment and the mortification of labor under capitalism. So, before we even begin, let us know that Karl Marx borrowed this term alienation from Hegel philosophy. And what Karl Marx did was, therefore, he took it beyond the level of Hegel philosophy to forge a kind of theory or a kind of critical sociological theory which will try to understand the social environment under the capitalism, just like what Karl Marx did when he tried to explain what is class struggle. Okay, so now coming to this term alienation, according to Karl Marx says that the history of mankind is to be explained by two important aspects. Or rather to say that the history of mankind has two important aspects to it. One is the history of growing control of human being over nature. Over the years or over centuries or over various civilization, what we have seen is that man, who was just one of the species of this planet, has gradually evolved to to gain control over the nature in which he has mastered. And the second important aspect of human history is also the history of increasing alienation of mankind. The history of increasing alienation of mankind, which means man, although he has gained control over nature, yet he is alienated from nature, he is alienated from the system, he is alienated from himself and his fellow being. So these are two important aspects of the history of mankind, that is according to Karl Marx. So therefore he says that when individuals in a society are alienated, certainly individuals or human beings as such, they feel powerless, they feel isolated, and they even consider the social world as meaningless. They consider or they have a sense of feeling that the social world is meaningless. So therefore, So therefore, what happens is, he says, in such a situation where he is alienated from, as I said, from the nature, from the social system or institutions, from himself and his fellow being, and where he sees the social world as meaningless, then social institutions that governed, govern the universe in which man lived becomes oppressive, and they are become oppressive because of the fact that they are beyond their own control. So Marx, therefore, he says that all institutions under the capitalist society, they were all marked by the condition of alienation, and therefore this condition of alienation is certainly hostile to man himself, or it is certainly hostile to human being as an important species on the earth. So therefore, this concept of alienation, through this concept of alienation, Marx wants to explain to us that the existing capitalist system is, like we discussed yesterday, is exploitative in nature, and today we come to understand that through this process of exploitation, we are also in the human being is also in the process of being alienated. And when human beings are in the process of being alienated, when humankind are in the process of being alienated, then that particular system is certainly hostile to mankind. Karl Marx believed, he always believed, like we have discussed in the past, again and again I'm saying this, that labor is the essence of mankind. You know, man is defined by his capacity to work or his labor power. And this is something that Karl Marx says separates him from animals. You know, this is something that separates him from animals. Another very important thing that Karl Marx always believed is that man is a conscious being, and what he does is he objectifies his thought into reality. You know, he objectifies his thought into something that is reality, which means if he imagines something, if he thought of something, he will make sure that that something which is imagined will be made possible. Okay, so therefore, in his text, the philosophic and economic manuscript, which he produced in 1844, Karl Marx says, or Karl Marx tries to focus on the question of the division of labor. He tries to answer why labor has to be divided. As I said earlier, if one person can make this table, why necessarily 5 or 6 people or 10 people have to make a table, wherein, as I said, one will be involved in making one leg, another 3 people, another 3 legs, one person applying sun mica, the other person may be applying the lock on the table, and so on and so forth. Why this division of labor? Or rather, why or what actually happens in the process of the division of labor? So therefore, through this, by dealing with this question of the division of labor, Karl Marx was able to delve into the alienation under the capitalist mode of production. So therefore, Karl Marx argues that the structure of relationship of production under the market system, he says, invariably, afflict the worker at the hands of the capitalist class, or that the structure of relation of production, or the structure of relationship that each one has with the process of production, is something that afflicts or that hurts, that discriminate, that that exploit the worker at the hands of the capitalist class. I don't think I need to explain that further, because we've been talking about that for the last few days. So, therefore, Karl Marx says that alienation of labor under capitalism means that the labor is external to the worker. You know, that the labor is external to the worker, which means the work that I have produced is alienated from me once it is produced. Once I might, I might have worked very hard, to construct one building, yet I do not own that building, and I cannot say that that building is made by, I have made that building because I'm being paid the wages for making a particular building. Okay, suppose I'm a worker or I'm a laborer. So, so therefore, this structure, as I said, is indeed afflicting to the worker under the capitalist system, and the labor becomes external to the worker, which means the product of my labor is alienated from me. Why? I cannot decide on the pricing of that labor. Once I have suppose the carpenter has made the table, or carpenters have made that table, especially in a factory system, he cannot say that this table should cost this much. If one person has made the table, then he can say, yes, this table will require 5 days and this amount of raw material, so therefore it costs this much. But in a capitalist system, in a system of market oriented, the worker becomes alienated from his own product. Now, suppose now I've given you this lecture, this class is finished, then I just remain as an employee of the Assam University, the Silchar, and I do not own this lecture anymore. Okay, so therefore, Karl Marx says this process estranges the worker from their species sense, or man becomes estranged from his own species as human being. He becomes estranged, or he is removed. He is kept away. He is thrown out from the system under which he is part of, that is of his own species as a human being. So, so therefore, Karl Marx says that this is likely to cause disaffection and discontent. So therefore, number one, what will happen is, even if I would have made, labor to create something, or to produce something, a commodity, I will become disaffected. Whether the capitalist sells the table or he doesn't sell the table, it is none of my business. I have made it, that's all. He may also become discontented, over the fact that in the process of making that table, how much sweat I have, how much I have sweated, how much I have given my energy to that. Yet that table is not mine. I cannot claim it as mine. And in the process, therefore, Karl Marx says, this also ruined the mind by inhibiting the use of free mental and physical energy. So it will ruin the mind. It will ruin my mind. As I told you, I might see my table, but I'm not able to buy it. I'm not able to own it. I'm not able to decide upon its pricing. I'm not able to decide where it should be sold and where it should not be sold. Therefore, it may ruin my mind, and therefore as a laborer, I am just being objectified as somebody who made that table and has no association with that particular table or with that particular product or with that particular commodity. So therefore, Karl Marx says that although human being in the capitalist system, they are free, although they are independent, yet under the capitalist system, human being or the workers, they are forced to work, or rather to perform activities that are dictated by the capitalist class. So therefore, as we've discussed earlier again, I need to sell my labor in order to get my food, clothing, shelter. I only have to sell, therefore I have to sell my ability to work. Even though I have independence to do or not to do, but my independence is dictated by whether I have food on my table or cloth to wear. Therefore, my activity, I am forced to perform my activity by the capitalist class who pay me wages. So therefore, the workers, Karl Marx says, the workers are divorced from its intellectual potential. Since I am forced to do the work that I may not like, but it pays me well, that I may not prefer to, but it pays me well. So therefore, workers, in this process, workers are reduced to their natural basic functions of eating, drinking, reproducing outside their productive labor. So instead of human being become innovative, become creative, being able to create something new, being able to involve in productive forces which will make him feel satisfied, he is rather made to do work that he is not satisfied at all. He is not. He does not feel as the creator of that particular product at all. So reducing him to his natural basic function, that is, after I finish my work, if somebody has gone to office in the morning and come back in the night, what he does is his only activity is eat, drink, and reproduce, and that is what he does outside his labor, because he's not able to use his intellectual ability. He's not being able to use his innovation, his creativity, and so on and so forth. So he becomes deeply dissatisfied. He becomes deeply discontented, may not be with others, but first of all with himself. So therefore, in order to corroborate this argument, Karl Marx uses the analogy of religion, whereby he says that submission to God, or rather, where this process of submission to God is conceived as a tool to make people accept their own exploitation. Where Karl Marx is saying that, you see, what does religion do? Religion is the opium of the masses. People are made to believe that there is God, and in the process of being made to believe that there is God, this process, this tool, also makes people to accept that they're to accept the fact that they are being exploited without any objection, without any objection at the hands of the powerful elites. So therefore, whatever the ecclesiastical groups say, whatever the priests or the pundits or the whoever is the religious head say, people tend to believe, and therefore even if in the process they are being exploited, they will accept that and they will not object to it. So likewise, he says in the capitalist system, workers, they have to submit themselves. That therefore this process of submitting themselves leads to a situation that contrived and constrain their productivity, or this process of workers having to submit to the capitalist class in order that they get wage rather than in order that they can grow intellectually, creatively, innovatively, and so on and so forth, leads to the situation where they are constrained to become less productive in their activity, just performing what the capitalists are saying. Just as I have given you an example at the beginning of this lecture, where if you go to a factory system today, people are made to do the same job over and over again. You must have seen lots of video about how maybe different commodities are being produced. One person is standing in one place the whole day or whole night in order to produce the same, to finish one part of the making of that product. If you go to those people who are working in the BPO, they are repeating the same sentence over and over again throughout day and night. So therefore, Karl Marx says that this whole process then lead to one result, and that result is the enrichment of the owners, or ensuring that the owners become richer and richer in this means of production, while the workers are being more and more exploited. They are being driven by poverty, or they are being challenged with debts and so on and so forth. So Karl Marx, therefore Karl Marx, in his effort to understand capitalist system of division of labor, he therefore explained to us that the division of labor is alienating the worker in 4 different ways. Now we come to this 4 different ways. Number 1, he says that alienation of worker from the product of their labor entails that they perform production activities that is forced upon them by the capitalists for the sake, as I said earlier, of the enrichment of the capitalists and their own personal and familial subsistence. So therefore, number 1, what happens is the workers, they are alienated from their own process of production. Okay, so in the process, what happens is the capitalist becomes richer, and they are actually just being able to maintain their own life, their own personal and family subsistence, or able to feed their own family. So therefore, he says that workers do not have any significant power over the specification of products. They cannot decide what kind of product I will produce. How many, the quantity or the quality of the product. They cannot say we want to make a good table, or will do an expensive or cheap table. Everything will be decided by the capitalist. Or he cannot even decide as to where this product will end up in, or the whole process of manufacturing and distribution of the product will be decided by the capitalist. They cannot acquire the product they have produced. This is therefore one of the very important aspect where the laborer or the worker is being alienated. He is alienated from the product itself. Second, he says that this alienation of the worker also it refers to the estrangement that the worker feel in the way work is done. That is because he has no significant power over the design, the spec of the product, and therefore he has to perform his own productivity only as being directed and against their own will. So in the process, what happens is he is alienated from his own consciousness, he is alienated from his own intellectual capacity or his ability to work. So therefore his work becomes arduous and long hours just for the means of survival or subsistence, and he cannot opt out of this process also, because he is being paid wages, or he is able to feed his family through this system that is existing in the capitalist system. So therefore he is not able to control or to create products at his own will. So as I said, he is alienated from his own consciousness, from his own self. The third, and therefore Karl Marx says that labor is in such a situation not voluntary, but it is forced upon him. Free labor, as I said earlier, although he is independent, he becomes a category known as forced labor. The third important aspect of this process of alienation is that the capitalist system alienates the worker by the fact that he is disconnected. He gets disconnected from his own species essence. From his own species essence. As I said earlier, Karl Marx he always assert that the uniqueness of human species is that he is able to work, he is able to think and convert that thinking into reality. So he is even alienated from his own species essence and his own originality, and therefore Karl Marx used this in order to assert that under the capitalism, laborers, they are exploited, they are estranged from their own true human spirit of creativity and innovations. So therefore man or laborers, they are alienated from their own essence of creativity, their own essence of innovation, their own essence of consciousness, thinking, and so on and so forth. So therefore labor, according to Karl Marx, is, as I said earlier, the human species essence and the conscious life activity, and therefore conscious creative being of human as the conscious creative beings, which is objectified by the product of his labor, is being alienated from him. So, which means he is alienated even from his own consciousness. He is alienated from his own creativity, as I said earlier. So therefore, Karl Marx says, unlike animals, men actually, they meet their need through conscious thoughts and their ability to transform nature into the object of their thought, or to transform the nature that he controls into something that he wants to. But in the capitalist system, what happens is, human being that has this powerful energy, that this powerful resources, they are merely being converted by the capitalists through by the means of capital, by the means of wages, and therefore they are alienated from their own essence. So therefore in the capitalist system, man is alienated from all these things. He is paid the wages, and what he does with that wages, he feeds himself and his family. That's all. So therefore, this, as I told you, this repetitive nature of work and the mental labor, Karl Marx says, is meaningless and devoid of a deeper purpose of life, of human species itself, as compared to the kind of productive activities that allow creativity and innovations, or rather that allow human being to use his own resources for his own good and the good of his society. Okay, so everything is decided by the capitalist. The fourth aspect, or the fourth form of alienation, or the fourth category of alienation, is alienation of the workers from other workers. So in the capitalist system, where there is the process of competition, what happens is workers are pitted against each other through the process of competition by the means of wages. So Those who can produce more, they earn more. Those who can produce less, they earn less, and so on and so forth. And if you are skilled and you are unskilled labor, there is already the creation of different identity which are pitted against each other. So they are alienated from their natural economic interests as a result of this false consciousness. Karl Marx says that this is false consciousness. We have, if we remember, even Charles Fourier talk about this false consciousness. He says, you see, that this competition, the spirit of competition has made the world to believe that the poor are actually poor by their own doing. You know, the laborers are poor because they are unable to be to create their own space, or they are unable to compete with each other. So in such a way, you see, Karl Marx says that this is false consciousness, and therefore in the process people are being alienated because of what he calls as the commodity fetishism, or by way that we relate to each other not as human being anymore, but by commodity fetishism. I am related maybe with my neighbor by, whether I have a house as big as that of my neighbor, I have a car as many as my neighbor have, or am I, a beggar sitting in front of my neighbor? So commodity fetishism. Therefore he says social relationship with things instead of relationship with people. So what happens is, in this process we are related to each other, and we are defined by in our society by the kind of social class that I carry in my life. As I said, whether I have a house, I'm living in the neighborhood, whether I have a house of my own or I don't. So no more attribution of the self. So therefore in the process, I do not attribute myself anymore as somebody who can create as a human being different from animals, but I attribute myself by how much I can compete with my neighbor, how much I can compete with my friends, how much I can compete with my with my relatives, and so on and so forth. So therefore all we can say that all the four aspects shows that the working class are alienated labor. They are alienated labor. They become alienated. We have become meaningless, other than the activity that are forced upon us, not the ability that we can labor and create and innovate, but by the ability that we are doing our work and we are paid for that. So therefore, you see, many analyses have shown that there are many, as I said earlier, there are many processes that is taking place in our mind for us to perform one particular activity, and this means a lot to us as human being. Yet Karl Marx says alienation takes place, where we are alienated from our psychological being, alienated from our ability to create something, and this is all the result of private productive property. So therefore, what is alienation? Alienation is nothing but the result of the perpetration of capitalism, of private property. So therefore, alienation, he says, can be removed only by the process when the workers get together, like we have seen how Karl Marx talk about class struggle, how to create communism, and how actually this should not necessarily be through violent revolution, but rather by developing the system in which people can become direct owners of the means of production. So this correction, against the, or the correction for the inherent antagonism within the capitalist system of the mode of production is the only way in which we can get out of this process of alienation. So therefore, Karl Marx, as I discussed yesterday, he suggests that communism is the best form to do away with alienation, because in communism there will be no more competition. In communism, everybody will be using his own, will be able to be himself and to create what he can, and therefore he says, last word let me quote, that Karl Marx, he said, the overcoming of private property as the appropriation of human life is thus the positive outcome of all alienation. I repeat again, the overcoming of private property as the appropriation of human life is thus the positive overcoming of all alienation. So, by overcoming capitalist mode of production, which is based on private property, and human life can positively overcome the the process of alienation. Okay, so this is what I want to discuss with you today when we talk of alienation. So I'll stop here. Thank you very much. If you have any questions, I will take them now. Okay, thank you.